Hi, I'm back again in the studio, and today I would like to talk to you about the kind of holding bay that I'm in after a bereavement. Um, to briefly recap, my son Costya died a very lonely, sad death of drugs and alcohol addiction in February this year, and I found him. And I've spoken about that in my previous video about finding him and something of his life. What I want to talk about today is almost something that defies description. It's about the kind of holding bay that I'm in and I have put myself in after this loss, this bereavement. Um, it's a time where, in theory, it's a good idea because I've decided to detach from most of the world outside and not do anything particular. So, no work, um, no obligations. There are always some, but no real obligations. It's a time to let myself sit and dwell and let the thoughts come. And before I do that, I think, well, this is a good thing. And I see myself sitting in the garden. I see myself sitting in soft chairs. I see myself just thinking and letting time pass. In reality, it's very, very hard because life doesn't stop because somebody dies. Life goes on in its full intensity for everyone else, even for me. Even though I have decided to sit in a holding bay, the intensity of life has not stopped. And it's difficult because the idea is that it does stop and that I gather my thoughts and that I sort this loss out. Well, it's a very good idea, but like all ideas, it is simply that. So I am sitting in a self-imposed holding bay, and I'm glad to be there. I am not taking on new work as such. I'm not creating new work. I am allowing the hours to go by. And for somebody who's a very busy person, that's quite hard. Just merely sitting and not doing anything is hard work because my life has told me I need to keep moving, and in order to be relevant I have to keep speaking and I have to keep producing. Well, that's highlighting that old phrase that we are not human doings, we are human beings, and at the moment I'm looking at being a human being. So here I am, and time is going by. Sometimes I wake in the morning and I'm full of sorrow and I'm full of a kind of anxiety in my stomach because I remember all the things that went wrong in Kostya's life. And I know that we have to be careful of that kind of thinking, however it happens. I am going to have to go through that. Should I have thrown him out of the house that time when he was so young? Should I have ignored him when he called in despair from a London crack den? Should I have spoken to the police that time he was arrested for drunk and disorderly? Should I have said to him, you can come any time and be who you are? Well, the thing is the past and it's done. There's nothing I can do about it. I do have to think those thoughts. I do have to sort them out, but I don't dwell in them. And this is part of the holding bay, is to find a way not to go down into those thoughts, which are legion. There are more of them than the happy thoughts because Kostya's life was so hard. And I was so powerless. So this time is about coming to terms as well. The whole family, my other son and my other daughter, they also have to come to terms with this loss. And though my daughter is the mother of 4 young children, and she and her husband work very hard, they still have to come to terms with the loss. and their oldest son, age 7, misses Costya a great deal because they had Pokemon in common. Costya was a great Pokemon aficionado, and so is my oldest grandson. My other son is struggling badly, and yes, what can I say without going into details? He is a great worry at the moment, but he lives with me here. He's 26. He and Costya were very close. They were very good for each other, and they were also very bad. Okay, so there's that to deal with. So here I am, wondering how it is that I can let time go. I remember when I lost my second husband. I remember coming home to this house and sitting in my front sitting room where the light is so beautiful, and I sat in a chair full of utter despair because I lived at his house, and watching the light of the sun shone on the wall opposite, and it was a very bright piece of light, and I remember fixing my eyes on that. And time passed and I didn't notice it. The only way that I realized that time had passed was that the light had moved across the room and was beginning to disappear. And I felt that that was the most beautiful, healing few hours for somebody in despair. The time passed easily. I was fixated on something which I think is important, which is the light. And when I came to, I felt rested. And I take that as a kind of lesson that time is allowed to pass and I am allowed to do nothing. Sitting and thinking and doing nothing is hard. I have spoken before about the light and the dark, and I am very, very inspired by light and dark, and I'm looking for the light in this bereavement. But to talk about the dark is something that is very insidious and very powerful, and it lives in our world. The darkness, which is insidious, relentless, destructive, clever, lives in our world. It inhabits our minds, it inhabits us, and it makes us doubt ourselves, it makes us feel bad about ourselves, it makes us agree that we are unlovable, it makes us confused. And when we try and turn to the light, the darkness intensifies as if to say, no, there is no light, there is only us, there is only the darkness. Stay here, stay down, we have you, there is no hope for you, you can never get out of this, it will always be this way, and you deserve it. So that's what I'm not doing, because I may have mentioned before, this is my 6th personal bereavement. I have lost, as many of us have, mother and father, brother, a wonderful partner, husband, and now son. And each of those bereavements has helped me deal with the idea of loss. And so now, with this loss of Costya, I'm determined not to go back into that darkness. The first time I was bereaved in 2007, I did go into the darkness. I stayed there for a long time. I was quite mad. Partly because I'd never experienced grief and loss before, partly because death was a new thing for me. Since losing my partner in 2007, I began working on a project, an art project called A Graceful Death, where I interviewed people facing the end of life. I did their portraits and wrote their stories and exhibited all these stories and portraits for years, growing the stories all the time. And I also went to train as a soul midwife, and I also worked at my local hospice. So I had a lot of, I went into it fully because I had been so grief-stricken and I needed to understand. So the Graceful Death exhibition, it's behind me, it's over there, and I take it out and I show it sometimes, and it's quite powerful, as is the Addicts exhibition. So death is something which by now you don't get used to. You can't. Each loss is powerful, each loss is individual. No death is the same, in that the person who's gone is never the same as anyone else. But this time I know the darkness is waiting for me, and I'm not going there, and I'm looking for the light. And part of this holding bay now is to give myself a chance to look at the darkness, not let it possess me, and look to the light. And the light is this: I am powerless over the life and death of my son. His journey was not my journey. His story was not my story. We were bound together as mother and son, and both of us did the best we could in those roles. Both of us learned through his life about love and the power of love, which is not a sentimental thing it's not a reciprocal thing with somebody in addiction. It's a powerful, big, hard thing that crashes around you. You pick it up and you start again, and you expect nothing, but you still do it. And sometimes the love gets through, and there is something there, and you get through to that person. So Costya was the most fantastic teacher for me. So I am grateful. I'm grateful for that. The light is also, in my own personal belief, that there is a God. There is a divine presence, and there is somewhere to go after we die. I don't believe that it is just a wipeout. It doesn't matter if you feel that or think that. It doesn't matter that I think this, but I do think it. And this is what faith is. You have no proof, but you just believe it. In this case, it's comforting for me to think that Costya has gone somewhere where there is no pain, where no amount of rehab on earth can possibly match the amount of rehab he has where he is now. And I like to think that Costya, on that lonely, cold, dirty sofa in February, injecting his last injection, giving up because life was so difficult and he was so ill and his heart just stopped, that he was met by a group of people who had been in his position, who were now up in the light, whose job it was to put their hands down and to help these poor souls into the light. They say, come on now, we've been there, you are safe, there is nothing more to fear, and your body will stay there. We have you, there is only light and love now. Come and rest, and we will deal with all your pain, and it will be gone, and that will be forever. So, my holding bay. I'm in the studio today. I'm beginning to get ideas of what I might want to do, but I'm not going to do them yet, because my holding bay time hasn't finished, and I still have to work out who I am without my son, what I feel, how to support my other 2 children, how to support my 4 grandchildren, and how to simply love myself in the light through this. So I'll speak to you again soon.